Right, so you're probably wondering why I'm doing another video touching upon the Xbox, upgrading a soft modded Xbox hard drive. And I'm doing another one basically because there is still quite a few things that I didn't manage to fit into the last video. Well, actually, I just winged the last video. I just went through everything that was kind of on the top of my head, basically. Yeah, so I've actually got some notes now, and the last video I just thought, well, I wanted to make a video on the subject, and it was just a case of I want to do a video, and so I did a video. I didn't make any notes. After going through everything and reading people's comments on the last video, there is quite a few things that I actually left out the last video, or points that I didn't manage to bring up. So the first one is, if you're using a SATA hard drive to do the upgrade, then when you've finished actually finished the mod and you stick it in your Xbox and everything, when you boot the console up, when you get that boot up screen of the Xbox symbol and the Microsoft underneath it, and then it obviously goes into the modded dashboard. When you get that Xbox symbol, it'll actually take longer on screen. It'll actually seem like the screen is frozen and there's something wrong with the hard drive, but there's not. Basically, you get that Xbox symbol for about, I don't know, 30 odd seconds. Then the Microsoft bit underneath will pop up. That'll be like another 10 to 15 seconds on screen. And then slowly it'll eventually roll over into the modded dashboard. So it will look like your hard drive is frozen, but trust me, all it is the boot sequence just takes longer, that's all. And that only happens if you use a SATA hard drive for the upgrade. And the other thing is, it doesn't affect the Xbox in any other way. It doesn't make your games run slower. It doesn't make the dashboard run slower or emulators run slower. It's basically like a computer where the boot sequence takes ages, but when you actually get into Windows or whatever, it runs super fast and super fine and everything. So it's just a longer boot sequence, that's all. I don't know why it happens when you set up where it does. The other thing I wanted to touch upon, which a really good friend brought up in the comments in my last video, was he said, was your hard drive that you used NTSC or FAT32? Well, when I actually decided to use that hard drive, I knew that it was NTFS. But when doing research on upgrading the hard drive, I found out that the original stock hard drives that come with the Xbox, they're actually in FAT file format. That's FAT. And so what I did was, knowing that my hard drive that I was going to use was NTFS, I went and found a freeware program, downloaded that, installed it, and just formatted the hard drive that I was going to use into FAT. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessary. I'm not saying that you have to do that. It might be completely and utterly unnecessary and there's just no point in doing it, but I'm just saying that's what I did. I changed the file format to FAT, and like I said, when I did the upgrade, it went pretty smoothly. I didn't have no problems. So I'm just saying that's what I did. One other point though, if you do decide to do that, is if you're using like Windows 7, if you're I can't remember how to do it now, but if you click on the hard drive that you want to change the file formats that it uses, it doesn't actually give you the option to format the hard drive FAT32 or FAT. I think the one that it uses now is FATX, and that's just a newer file system thing that's meant to be a lot better than FAT32. So unfortunately, if you've got Windows 7 or even Windows XP, you might have to do what I did and just get a program that will allow you to format the hard drive in an earlier FAT file thing, whatever. Yeah, so okay, what next? Let's see. Oh yeah, another point to bring up is that I used Xbox HDM when upgrading my my soft-modded Xbox hard drive. But if your Xbox is actually chipped, you might have to use a different method. I know things are slightly different if you've got a chipped original Xbox rather than a soft modded one. I actually went for a soft modded Xbox because it's something I could do there and then at little to no cost basically, and it just seemed, at least to me, it just seemed better than going for the chipped method. There is a lot of advantages and disadvantages to each, whether to use chipped or getting the original Xbox soft modded, but I went for the soft modded Xbox. So if you're upgrading the hard drive, I've not looked into this, but I think it might be different for whether you've got it chipped or soft modded, so that's just something to bear in mind. Next is once you've booted into the dashboard and you've got everything done and ready and everything, what you need to know is that if you're using a hard drive that's over 200 gigabytes, something like that, then you need to change the cluster size of the partitions in your Xbox. Basically, if you're using a hard drive that's over 200 gigabytes, what can happen is if you don't change the cluster size of the partitions on that drive, is that sometimes the data can corrupt, and obviously you don't want that to happen. If you're using a hard drive that's under 200 gigabytes, you don't have to worry about it. You'll be using 16K clusters as standard, so you don't have to worry about it. But if, like me, you've used a bigger drive, I've used a 500 gigabyte drive, then you have to use 32 kilobyte clusters. If you're using a hard drive over 512 gigabytes, I think it is, then obviously you have to format the partitions into 64 kilobyte clusters. Now, before you format the partitions on your Xbox, and this is something you need to do, go into, well, I'm using Unleash X dashboard. So what you need to do is you need to go into system settings, go down to the hard, I think it's the hard drive bit, and in there there should be a thing saying allow F partition and allow G partition. Now your F partition should have been created and it should be allowed anyway already, so it should already be there, but the chances are you haven't got a G partition there. So allow the G partition and then exit out all of that, and then just keep pressing the B button over and over again. Once you've done that, I'd say reboot the Xbox. Actually, this is another point to bring up. Don't go on the dashboard to reboot, because if you're using a SATA hard drive, for some reason reboot won't work. So you have to actually go to shutdown. So once you've shut down the Xbox and rebooted, go into the file search option of your on the Unleash X dashboard at least, and then just format the G partition and the F partition only. Don't partition any other drive. Obviously you don't want to partition the C drive because that's got all your modded dashboard and original dashboard files, and if you format that, you're fucked. And certainly don't partition the E drive. Obviously that's got all your program files and everything, and again, if you format that, you're fucked. And then you should have as well, you should have as far as I know, it's XYZ, and then another drive, I can't remember what it is. So you got E, you got C, E, XYZ, and I think there might be another one, and then all those ones do not touch. Don't format them, don't touch them or anything. All you're interested in is the F partition and the G partition. They're the only ones that you need to format. So if using a 500GB hard drive like I did, what the F partition, at least on mine, is something like 120GB, and then the G partition is like 300 and something odd. Now once I use the file search to format those two partitions, I then got another program called XB Partitioner 1.1. I installed that onto the apps folder of my Xbox, and I used that to then format the F partition and the G partition into 32KB clusters. Well, actually the F partition was 16KB clusters, but that's because it's 129GB on that partition. So I've left that at 16KB clusters. I'm not sure whether I should leave that at 16KB clusters or whether I actually need to format that at 32. But the G partition, which is 320 odd gigabytes in size, actually formatted that with 32GB clusters. And like I said, that they're the only two partitions that you need to format. Right, there's two last things I wanted to talk about. First is getting Xbox Partitioner to actually work, because chances are when you download Xbox Partitioner 1.1, you're going to have a bit of trouble getting it to work. So this is what you have to do. Create a new folder called Xbox Partitioner 1.1, obviously. Now once you've done that, click on the zipped XP Partitioner folder that you've downloaded, and inside that there should be 4 different files. The first one is it's called source, and that is a raw file. So unzip that source raw zipped file into the XP Partitioner folder that you've just created. Once you've done that, then transfer the other 3 files in the zipped XP Partitioner folder over into your new folder that you've created. And those 3 other files should be, well, there's one text file that I can't even pronounce what it's called. There's an information file, and there's a .xpe file. So once you've done that, click into the XP Partitioner folder that you've just created, which now has all those files in there, and then find the one that's called XP Partitioner 1.1.xbe. Now what you need to do is click on that and rename that file default.xbe, all in lowercase. Once you've done that, you're done. All you need to do is transfer that folder into your apps folder and then it'll work. Now the last thing that I wanted to mention, basically the E folder and the C folder, and they're both partitions as well. They're both partitions and folders that you don't want to touch. You don't want to partition them, you don't want to format them or nothing, you just want to leave them as they are. If you format them or partition them or whatever, you've basically screwed up your hard drive. So anyway, you're in the E folder, you've got the apps folder, you've got the games folder, and you've got the emulators folder. Now the apps and emulators, that's pretty self-explanatory. The games folder, that's basically the folder that when you want to install an Xbox game onto your hard drive to run it off the hard drive, that the games folder is where the dashboard puts, you know, the game. The problem that come up basically was that the E partition or the E folder is basically 4.5 gigabytes in size, and then obviously you've got the two new partitions that you've done in upgrading your hard drive, the F and G, which depending on your the size of the hard drive you've upgraded to could be anything really. Mine's one is the F folder, which is 129 gigabytes, and my other one is the G folder, which is 320 odd gigabytes. The problem was that I got to a point where I'd put so many apps and emulators in the apps folder, which is in the E folder, the E partition, and it got to a point where I'd nearly used up that 4.5 gigabytes, and I was like, hold on a minute, what happens now? What happens when I fill that 4.5 gigabytes? And I've barely even begun to put all the stuff that I want to put on the Xbox hard drive. So, you know, say for example I've got another 20 gigabytes I want to put on there. How's that going to work if I've only got, you know, 4.5 gigabytes to play with on the E partition? So thinking about how computers work, I was kind of thinking, well, surely the Xbox isn't just going to start using memory off another partition, because that wouldn't really work. So how the hell have other people got to put so many gigabytes, well over the 4.5 gigabytes that's on the E partition, onto their Xbox hard drive? I couldn't figure that out. I eventually managed to find some information about it. Basically, this is what you need to do. Delete the apps, games and emulators folder in your E partition or E folder. Now hopefully you've not got anything in those folders once you've upgraded, and if you have, then obviously either save all your stuff that's in those folders if you haven't saved them if you haven't got them saved on your computer already, but if you haven't got anything there, then just delete them. So once you've deleted the apps, games and emulators folder, go into either your F or G partition, whichever one you want to use, and then create those folders. So in either the F or G partition, you need to create the apps, emulators and games folders. Once you've done that, install whatever you need to in those folders, and those folders now will be available on your dashboard, so you will be able to access them, and that is how you start using, you know, the 300 or a couple of hundred gigabytes that are on those partitions. So basically every time you install an app or a game or whatever, it's going to go straight onto the G or F partition, which is phenomenally bigger. So you're never going to need to install anything really on the E partition or an E folder, because obviously it's only 4.5 gigabytes and it's not really big enough for anything. Right then, there's just one last little detail to go over. If you want to install your games to your hard drive, just like I've done here, and this is all games that I own and have installed to the hard drive. Once you've upgraded your hard drive and you start installing Xbox games, what's going to happen is you're going to come across a few, or a lot rather, that just won't work. What will happen is you'll click on the games and they'll load up probably as far as the title screen, and then they just won't want to work. Now there's two things that you need to do here. One, if you've got some saves of those games and you've got like a profile of those games, I know it's really annoying, but go ahead and delete those saves and see if it'll work. If the games still don't work, then what you've got to do is this. At least in on the X dashboard, go to File Explorer, go to the E folder, go to Cache, and everything that's in the Cache folder, go ahead and delete everything in there. Once you've deleted everything, back out, and then turn off your Xbox, turn it back on, and then your games should be up nicely.